So there are two main fights when it comes to Roe versus Wade. There's a major case, obviously, at the Supreme Court. We're waiting for the decision, the Dobbs case. In that case, if the court does what many people expect, which is to, even if they don't overturn Roe versus Wade directly, to basically gut Roe versus Wade and return abortion regulations to the rightful place, the states and state legislatures and governors, your people that are most representative of you and the communities they represent. So what we are looking at is the potential for, and we're preparing for right now at the ACLJ, we have a team together right now that is focusing already on the states. We know the abortion industry is doing it. So what we're doing is our team is, and we're already active in the states. We have people testifying in states, working on legislation in states. But we know about half the country, about half the states in the country are red states, pro-life governed states with pro-life legislatures who will want to enact similar laws. Some of them might have to make constitutional amendments because of ways that they put abortion in their laws a long time ago. Some will be able to do it right through the legislative process. So we're going to work with all of them. They're going to face legal challenges. But Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry, we know, isn't just going to lie down. So that is, again, that's kind of part one. Part two is we continue always to work on the cases where the abortion industry tries to shut down pro-life speech. We have 10 pro-life cases right now at the ACLJ that we're actively working on. So we're at 10 right now. Two of those are pro-life speech cases where the abortion industry wants to shut down your ability to talk to people, even on a sidewalk, a public sidewalk. Another part of this we're watching very closely, we represent a lot of pro-life pregnancy centers. They have been a target of the abortion industry. So we're preparing not for just to declare victory if the Supreme Court does the right thing and overturns Roe versus Wade, or at least makes Roe versus Wade pretty much meaningless and allows the states to go back and start regulating abortion the way it should have always been. There shouldn't have been this federal judicially created prohibition on states from being able to be involved. So we've got multiple approaches and we're preparing for everything. We already have the teams in place at the ACLJ. That's a really good question because we're going to celebrate a major victory. We're not just going to say, okay, now we got to go fight. It will be a huge victory that attorneys and groups like ours at the American Center for Law and Justice have been fighting for since our existence, for decades. And since Roe versus Wade was enacted in 1973, and the last case that was even similar was in the early 1990s. So, I mean, it's been decades since a case like this was even heard by the Supreme Court. So if we win the Dobbs case, and it goes back to states to regulate abortion, and we're talking about, again, abortion regulations in the earliest weeks of pregnancy, we're going to celebrate a major victory for life. But we have to prepare for the battle. So it's not over. I think a lot of people think if we win this case, we've won the pro-life issue, we've been working on it for decades, we can go work on something else now. That's not the case. The fight is actually going to be more active than it's ever been before because the abortion industry is going to be fighting for its survival. And it's $1 billion a year business. So when you're fighting $1 billion business for its survival, they're not just going to go and say, oh, well, we lost a case at the Supreme Court. We're not going to fight anymore. We know they're going to ramp up their fight. And there's going to be states, especially the very liberal states, that are going to enact really out of control pro-abortion laws. But we know this is going to give us an opportunity, not just in the red pro-life states, to go in and help make sure we enact good pro-life legislation and defend that pro-life legislation. But it's also going to give us an opportunity to take this debate right to the people. So we wouldn't have to be just reliant on federal courts and fighting against Planned Parenthood in court, but actually talking to the people who elect their state legislators and their state senators and their state government, their governors. Because even in a blue state, are people and their constituents really going to want to enact out of control, really just overly broad pro-abortion legislation? I mean, there's states talking about creating free flight programs so that women can go and have abortions at later terms in their pregnancy in their states. That's not going to be a given, I don't think. I think we don't need to just accept that we're going to lose in some states. We're going to fight in all 50 states. So we knew once the Supreme Court took the Dobbs case that we need to prepare to even do more work at the state level. But right now, the ACLJ, we have attorneys testifying before state legislatures. We just had a win out of Maryland in their state legislature where they changed some wording in the legislation already because of our testimony there. We haven't had to go to court, so we do that. We're working with Governor Noem in South Dakota in their state on an informed consent a law, as well as looking towards the future. So we do this work in states across the country, Oklahoma, Tennessee. I mean, I could go on throughout the list because we get contacted by state legislators. What we're going to do that's different now is we're preparing to be more proactive. I think that's the key. We're not waiting for the legislation. We know a lot of states are going to want to enact very similar laws to Mississippi if the Supreme Court gives it the green light. So we want to help those states craft the right law for their state under their state laws and constitution so that it's an easy fight in court in the states where we've got great pro-life governments already in place. Then we're going to look at the states that are kind of, again, the in-between states where it's going to be a finer line and a tougher battle, but still we think we have a good chance of getting more good pro-life legislation done. And then there's the third states, the deeply liberal states that are going to want to enact very extreme pro-abortion legislation that we will be fighting against too. And we're going to take this directly to the people. We're going to be launching some new initiatives at the ACLJ so that we can be more involved in your states directly. And I know many of you have signed our petitions before for life, and on this Dobbs case specifically, to encouraging the court and states to start enacting pro-life legislation if we get the win at the court this summer in Dobbs. And I just want to let you know those petitions are not just for the federal government and for the House and the Senate, but we're able to break those down by zip code when you sign it. So we know how many people we have in your state in a legislative district. So we're going to be able to take that information and even take it to not just your governor, but your state legislature and your communities, and be able to say, listen, you've already got a lot of constituents, thousands of constituents in your community who are concerned about this issue, who care deeply about this issue, and want you to do the right thing on life. So to be clear on this, we could get a big win in the Dobbs case without the court explicitly overturning Roe versus Wade. So the court could say, Roe versus Wade stands. I mean, it really wouldn't have much weight anymore. But also Mississippi's law can go into place. Again, heartbeat kind of abortion restriction. If that's the case, the meaning of Roe versus Wade and the way it has burdened the pro-life movement, and also it's been this abortion distortion, the way that it's treated every law, because it created this judicially created constitutional right to abortion without limit. And then the court has slowly over time allowed some limits for late-term abortion. Now we're looking at heartbeat legislation much earlier in a pregnancy. So the court does not have to explicitly overturn Roe versus Wade for this to be a huge victory for life. It's really about what they're going to allow. And if the court says what Mississippi did has got the green light, then states across the country know they've got the green light as well. And it's taken the issue out of the federal government and it's put it right back into state legislatures. And they don't have to worry so much about the Department of Justice suing them over these laws if it's a Democrat in office. It's more, listen, Planned Parenthood's going to fight, obviously, but that's why groups like the ACLJ exist. We're able to go in, represent the state, represent the governor, like we do in South Dakota, at no cost to the state. So they can fight this battle without having to spend millions of dollars hiring a law firm. And so that's part one. Part two is, listen, we are always very careful about predicting and not predicting how the court is going to come out. If we were to lose this case, the fight for life's not over. We just have to double down on our efforts because we already know we're getting closer and closer. The Supreme Court has not heard a case like this even since for 3 decades. So we are getting closer and closer. So it would be a setback at the court if they were to say that the Mississippi law is unconstitutional and Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. Certainly that's a setback, but we just have to double down our efforts for life. But even if the court doesn't directly overturn Roe, we have to read that opinion very carefully. And if Mississippi's law gets green-lighted, then your state can do the same thing. I think you actually have a unique opportunity to be more effective than ever before. because it's one thing to get to your congressman or woman or your U.S. senator or even a governor, but when and if this issue is really returned to the states, it is your state legislature. So it's your state rep, your state senator, or however, if you're delegate, however your state's set up, and they are really responsive to you. You're going to have to look again at who you're voting for. Elections have serious consequences on these issues, to make sure that not only are you voting for somebody who checks the pro-life box, but you're going to vote for state reps, state legislatures, state governors who are actually going to do the tough work to get pro-life legislation that the Supreme Court may have green-lighted, but that means they've got to then actually do it and put it in place. So it's one thing for them to all claim to be pro-life. This is going to be a huge test for a lot of these legislators on if they are willing to go the distance and actually put in the laws, go through the committee hearings, make the changes they might have to make to their own state laws so that they can put in laws in place to protect human life. And just like I said earlier, our petitions, I think, can actually be more important. From the new initiatives that we're about to launch around this effort, we're going to be able to go into the states more directly. We already do that in the House and the Senate federally, but going into the states directly. So getting your friends and family to sign on to our pro-life petitions at ACLJ.org is going to be even more key. If the court greenlights this and says, yes, you can put these kind of abortion restrictions in place, yes, we can save so many more human lives in the United States, yes, we can no longer be the only other countries like us right now, North Korea and China. We don't want to be in that club. People think that Europe is very liberal. Their laws are much more restrictive on abortion than the United States. We want to get out of the North Korea and China human rights abuser club and get into the pro-life club in the United States of America. And we can do that by getting you involved. And we are great at doing that, but we're going to redouble our efforts, and we'll need you to redouble your efforts so that it's not just you signing our petition, which doesn't cost a thing. It doesn't take much time, but it's getting your friends and family to sign as well. And those are all available at aclj.org.